or you posted this whole Zoom thing from that's taking place tonight at 8 o'clock with what looks like 770 in the US and a whole story. Just can you just in 30 seconds, what is that actually all about, and what is the shiurim?
So yeah, with pleasure. So there's an international program of learning Rambam Maimonides where you learn a little bit every day.
Oh, so, is this that program? Oh, okay.
So this is actually a siyum celebrating the conclusion of the last track, because the one track takes 3 years to finish, and we're finishing it tonight. So I actually posted on my status 2 programs. There's one program tonight, and there's another program tomorrow night. The program tonight was arranged locally with local South Africans speaking about living with the Rambam or life lessons from the Rambam. And tomorrow, that's kind of more catered towards the South African crowd. And tomorrow night's program is an international program, which will be very different programs, but both interesting. But starting with tonight, that's going to be local South Africans speaking about the Rambam. So, yeah.
Is it going to actually be them talking about their stories, or they're actually doing the final learning and you just patch in and listen to the learning? Just want to get a sense of the gist of it.
So they have 4 panelists. One of the 4 is a rabbi. The rabbi, his role will be to finish off the Rambam, to make that conclusion, to read the text of the Rambam. And the other 3 panelists are actually just going to give their take on the Rambam. So it's not going to be quoting the Rambam.
Okay. So,
So try to keep it colorful.
It's just their experience and their whole event. Okay, super. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you asked.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Super. Appreciate it.
Okay, so we concluded the section that dealt with a minyan and Baruch Hu and Kaddish, and now we move on to the next section of the davening. So if we look back at our chart of the morning prayers, so we said there's 4 general sections. There's singing His praise and Zimra, and then there's Shma and His blessings, the Shma and its blessings. And we've now just crossed the juncture from point 1 to point 2. The juncture between the 2 is Kaddish, Baruch Hu, and the minyan. And now we move on to the next step in davening, which is the Shma and its blessings. So just to give a little introduction before we start with the actual kitzur, the Shema is a mitzvah. The Torah says you should say it when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So it's a mitzvah to say the Shema twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. So we say it in the morning prayers and in the evening prayers. But the rabbis instituted that before we actually say the Shema in the davening, we should first recite a few blessings to warm up to the Shema, to speak about Hashem's greatness. And there's a total of 7 blessings through the course of the day. There's 3 blessings in the morning and 4 blessings in the evening. In the morning, there's 2 blessings before the Shema and 1 blessing after the Shema. And in the evening, there's 2 blessings before the Shema and 2 blessings after the Shema. So I'm going to see if in a moment I could pull up a siddur so you can see exactly what I'm speaking about. But sorry. Okay, sorry, bear with me just a moment. So I'll continue speaking while we're loading. So the rabbis instituted 7 blessings. And the purpose of that is for us to get ready for the Shema, because when we say the Shema, there's a lot of powerful things that are taking place. We're accepting upon ourselves the yoke of heaven. We're accepting that there's only one God. I got it now. And we are speaking about loving Hashem and dedicating ourselves to Hashem. A lot of powerful stuff goes on in the Shema, and we'll speak more about that in the next section, which speaks directly about the Shema. But before we get there, before we're ready to actually say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad and all the implications of that, to be a hatta, you should love God, we first need to speak about Hashem's greatness per se. The first section of the davening, verses of song, Pesukei Dezimra, is more where we sing Hashem's praise of how he's been kind to us. The next step, when we get ready to the Shema, is we don't just give a subjective look at Hashem of what he means to us, but we speak about Hashem's greatness as it is beyond us, as it is not just how we appreciate it, but how even all the angels in heaven are praising Hashem. And when we speak about how all the angels, which are called even chayot, which means animals, because they fire up with love like a wild beast, they're passionate, emotionally passionate about their love for Hashem, we speak about all of that, and that will get us fired up as well. The animal inside of us will also be passionate about loving Hashem. So the idea is that these blessings are there to help us get ready for the Shema. And there are a total of 7, as I just mentioned, through the course of the day, which corresponds to the verse which says 7 times a day, we praise you, Hashem. Just like we mentioned earlier, that there's at least 7 Kadeshim through the course of the day. So similarly, there are 7 blessings on the Shema. Okay, now, as we enter into the blessings of the Shema, the davening begins to take on a higher level of seriousness or a higher level of holiness. And while we said when it came to, up until this point, we said that you could pretty much answer Amen to any bracha at any point, from this point onwards, once we enter into the Shema and its blessings after the Chazan that says Baruch Hu, it's not so simple. It's not so easy to make interruptions. And actually, this chapter that we're learning today over the next 10 minutes is going to go through different points in the Shema and what type of interruptions can be made. So we'll start by defining the Shema and its blessings. What do we mean the Shema and its blessings? And then we'll speak about different stages. What happens if you're between paragraphs? What happens if you're in the middle of a paragraph? What happens if you're in the middle of a sentence? And what happens if you're in the middle of saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad? In each of these instances, if the community is just said a bracha, can you answer Amen? Can't you answer Amen? Can you say Kedusha, Kadosh, Kadosh, or can't you say Kedusha? So we're going to go through each of these 4 scenarios and discuss what are interruptions that can and cannot be made. Again, you can always look this up again later in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. So whatever you remember, great. But it certainly is giving us a general awareness as well of the holiness of the Shema and its blessings and how one should be super careful not to make any form of interruption, certainly not idle talk, when they are at this point of the davening, which has been, I guess, more of a general theme of, we have said already from Baruch She'amar, which is pretty much at the beginning of davening, one should not be talking any mundane matters, certainly not now when we are getting ready to say the Shema, as we've entered into the Shema and its blessings. So just so you see what I'm talking about, if you're a little bit familiar with the Art Scroll Siddur, which most of you use, so that's what I'm going with. So you have Baruch Hu et Hashem Barach, that's when you say Baruch Hu. And then over here you have the beginning of the first blessing. So if you see it says blessings of the Shema on the left-hand side. So this is the beginning of the first blessing, and it continues all the way down the page, the whole next page, up until Baruch atah Hashem yotzer ha'ma'orot. Blessed are you, Hashem, the creator of the luminaries. And you see over here it says Amen. That's blessing number 1. Then blessing number 2 starts immediately thereafter with Ahavat Olam or Ahava Rabbah and goes up until the Shema. Okay, we'll actually be seeing this all inside the Kitzur in just a moment, I remember. But just to run through it quickly, then we have the actual Shema and then the blessings that come after the Shema. Okay, so now to the Kitzur. Kriyas Shema and its 3 brachos, which are Yotzer Or, because that's how this first blessing starts, Yotzer Or Avorei Choshech, Ahava Rabbah, which is how the second blessing starts, Ahava Rabbah Havtano, and Emes V'Yatziv, or Emet V'Yatziv, which comes at the end of the Shema, Vayomer. So those are the 3 blessings that go with the Shema in the morning. And these blessings are more stringent in regard to interruptions than Pesukei Dezimra, the verses of song. Meaning that these sections of the davening, the Kriyas Shema and its brachos, are divided. So we say these prayers are divided into sections. The following are considered between sections. So what are the junctures? Because we just said in the slideshow that there's going to be a difference between whether you're between paragraphs or whether you're in the middle of a paragraph. So let's define what's considered between paragraphs. So he says the junctures are between Yotzer Avarot and Avarabah. So in the center over here, that would be between Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'orot and Avarabah. That's a juncture because you've just finished the first blessing and now you're on to the second. Between Abocher Ba'abo Yisrael Ba'ahava and Shma. So that's up right there, just when you get up to the Shema. And between Ovisharecha and Vahaya, between the first paragraph of the Shema and the second, and between Ala Aretz, which is the end of the second paragraph of the Shema, and Vayomer, which is the third paragraph of the Shema. If you're not that familiar, then don't worry too much about it, because we're going to take the general principle, which is what happens when you are in between sections. So that's what we'll speak about first over here. What happens if you are at one of those junctures? Either you are between Yotzer HaMa'orot and Avarabah, or you're between Avarabah and the Shema, or between the first paragraph and the second paragraph, or between the second paragraph and the third paragraph. So he says like this. At such junctures, you would be permitted to answer Amen to any bracha that you hear. So you can answer Amen. And of course, you are permitted to respond Kedusha. So that would be if the Chazan is repeating the Amidah and you're still behind, so you would be able to say Kadosh, 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 and Baruch Kavod Hashem B'mkomo, and all the whole of Kedusha. You would be able to respond to Kaddish. So if somebody is busy saying Kaddish, you'd be able to answer Amen, and you'd be able to respond to Baruch Hu. Parenthetically, there are different opinions of exactly what you can respond to when, but we'll just go with what the Kitzur says for now. However, to say Baruch Hu or Baruch Shema, that's something that you don't say. In fact, we said that you already don't say that from the very beginning almost of davening, from Baruch She'amar. Also, if you hear the community saying the Shema, you should not say the Shema with them. Rather, you should continue saying whatever you're saying aloud in the same tune so that it sounds like you're joining in, so it doesn't look like you're separating yourself from the community. But because when the community says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and if you don't do that, it will look like perhaps you don't believe in the one God. So by saying whatever you're saying in the same tune, in the same way, you can at least show publicly that you're with everybody on this one. Although you're a little bit behind in your davening, you'll get there soon. So those are the laws if you're between sections, that you can pretty much answer Amen to any bracha, but not Baruch Hu Baruch Shema, and not Shema Yisrael. If you're midsection, so if you're in the middle of one of these paragraphs, so you're anywhere in these pages except for between paragraphs, which is a little bit more intense because now you're in the middle of an actual paragraph, you're in the middle of saying a particular prayer. So then he says you should not respond even Amen, except for the following. Hakel HaKadosh, which is the end of the third blessing of the Amidah. So we're talking about when the Chazan is repeating the Amidah, you'd be able to answer Amen to the third blessing. I don't have that in front of me, but you'll see the end of the third blessing is Hakel HaKadosh. And you would be able to answer Amen to Shomea Tefillah, which is towards the end of the Amidah. This is Hashem who hears our prayers. You could so you could answer Amen only to those two blessings. You would also be allowed to answer Yehesh Me'Rabba Mavarach La'alam La'ome Almaya to Kaddish, but only that, and to the Amen at the end of Kaddish, where he says Ta'birat Ba'ama Bimru Amen. Again, if you want to remember this, you might need to go over it a few times, but we're getting the idea that if you're in the middle of a paragraph, then more serious laws apply. Less interruptions can be made. However, to the rest of the Amens of the Kaddish, you may not respond because they are not of the essence of the Kaddish. Upon hearing Kedusha, so if you're the repetition of the Amidah, you hear the Chazan say Kedusha, you should remain silent and listen to the Chazan, and then say with the congregation only the following two clauses, Kadosh, 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 and so Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzvas Melech La'aretz Kavayday. That's the first clause. And Baruch Kavod Hashem B'mkomo, the second clause. And according to some opinions, you could say the third clause as well, Yimloch Hashem, but everything else in between. So if it's on Shabbos, for example, during the Kedusha, there's a whole long song over there, often where the choir sings or people sing along in the middle of the Kedusha, so you wouldn't be allowed to sing along with any of that. You would have to remain silent. You could only say these 2 or 3 clauses from the Kedusha. Upon hearing Baruch Hu from the Chazan, or if you were called to the reading of the Torah, you would be allowed, or hearing somebody that's got an aliyah. So again, if the Chazan has just said, Baruch Hu et Hashem hamvorach, or if somebody got an aliyah and he said the same, so you would be allowed to answer Baruch Hashem hamvorach la'olam va'ed, as well as Amen to the person that got the aliyah. If the congregation is saying Modim, you would just be allowed to say the 3 words, Modim anachnu lach, but no more. And upon hearing the sound of thunder, there's a debate whether you do or don't make the bracha. Since these halachas are a little bit more on the technical side, for those that are less familiar with the prayers, I'm moving through it rather quickly and you could always revert back. Okay, now this is all if you're between paragraphs. If you're in the middle of a paragraph, so if these interruptions which are permitted in midsection, if they occur in the brachas, sorry, what he's saying over here is, now we're up to the next point. Looks like my numbering over here is slightly off. If you're in the middle of saying the blessing, Shema Yisrael, sorry, let me just read. If these interruptions which are permitted in midsection, if they occur in the brachas of Shema, you should manage to make the interruptions at the completion of a subject. And if it is during Shema, you should manage to make the interruptions between verses. If this is not possible, then you would repeat, go back to the beginning of the verse that you had started. So in summary, what he's saying over here is, if you're mid-sentence, you should try to reach the end of the sentence. But if you can't, then you could interrupt for whatever things we said you can. And then you would go back to the beginning of that particular sentence, not the whole paragraph, but that particular sentence. And finally, halacha number 5, this is all if you're in any section, with the exception of if you're in the middle of saying the verse, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Baruch Shem Kvad Malchuto Olam Va'ed, because if you're in the middle of saying those 2 verses, then you would not be allowed to interrupt whatsoever, even if the king greets you. You may not interrupt to respond, because that's really intense when you're saying Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. No interruption can be made whatsoever. He says at the end of Vayomer, between Ani Hashem Elokeichem and Emet v'Yatziv, also no interruption should be made. If any interruption will be made, you should rather say it a word or 2 later. If you've already said the word v'Yatziv, then you would be able to make an interruption. And finally, he says there's a whole section in the Shulchan Aruch that deals with greeting kings, and this doesn't really apply today, and so therefore he's not mentioning that at all. So in summary, we have pretty much 4 levels. We have from Baruch She'amar up until the blessings of the Shema. We have between paragraphs. We have in middle of a paragraph. And then we have while you're saying the verse, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to moving on to all the laws of how Shema itself is recited, please God, tomorrow.